This is our MEC Capital Day. We always hold it the first Thursday of the legislative session. It gives us an opportunity to bring our members in from all across the state to talk about legislative issues, MEC priorities from an advocacy standpoint, and really how we work together. And today's event was really part of our Pulse theme that we've been doing with our annual meetings, and today was collaborate. How do we collaborate? How do we work with our education officials? How do we work with our workforce development officials, our elected officials, and our other partners to focus on issues that are going to matter for our state and how we move our state forward?
What are the biggest issues in this session that affect business?
Well, it's a variety of things. I think there's some tax issues that are really important that we address that deal with competitiveness to make sure that we're dealing with having a competitive environment. Other issues include workforce development, continuing to fund our career coaches that are being placed all across the state, to continue funding transportation, to focus on how do we deal with the healthcare issue that's really moved to the forefront as something that we need to be talking about as we go forward. So all those things being said, I feel like we really do want to kind of focus on working with our legislative leadership, finding solutions, which is what has made MEC successful through the years. And days like today allow us to start those conversations from a broader sense with our entire membership. Good morning and welcome to MEC's Capital Day. What a great day to be here. What a beautiful day in Jackson, and we're very excited about what's ahead. You know, it's really great to be back holding this the first week of the legislative session. As you know, we've had some challenges the last couple of years that have caused us to do things differently. But right now, we're really excited about MEC's Capital Day being on the first Thursday of the session. What a fun way to kind of kick off what's happening from a legislative standpoint. What a fun way to actually have the opportunity to, going back to the Capitol today, to visit with legislators and really see what's going on. We really do have a special session planned for this morning, though. In just a few minutes, Governor Tate Reeves will be joining us for a conversation about what's happening across the state. We have a great group of education and workforce leaders here to discuss what the business community can do to really make sure we're collaborating in a way to make a difference in the outcomes and preparing the workforce of the future. And then we're going to talk to some of our partnering organizations about what to expect during this legislative session and ways that we can all work together to make a difference. But first, it is really my pleasure to introduce Martin Williams. He is the Vice President and CFO of Corinth and Tupelo Coke, and he is serving as the MEC Chair this year. So Martin, welcome. Glad to have you. Thank you. You know, Martin is the fourth chair to serve as a second generation chair of MEC. His father, Kenneth, was chair in 1991 and 92. And I think, obviously, Martin, just the commitment from your family, from your company, believing in the mission of MEC's role of the voice of business. Talk a little bit about that and the role MEC plays in helping develop public policy and why that's so important for us in our state.
Absolutely, will do, Scott. But first, let me take just a quick moment to say thank you for being here and welcome. So proud and happy to see you all here the first week of the legislative session to help us figure out how to move Mississippi forward and make it a better place. But our role at MEC, the way that I see it, is a statewide function, right? And I like to use the adage, rising tide lifts all boats. If MEC can help Mississippi be a better place to own and operate a business, then all of our businesses will benefit. And we're very good at working, we as an organization, you and your team are very good at working together with elected officials in really making a difference in Mississippi. And I think that's pretty well evidenced, if you don't already know, by the fact that we won the State Chamber of the Year Award. And so I'd love to recognize Scott and the team for that accomplishment. That was a big deal.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, we're very excited about being able to go back to the Capitol. We'll take some buses up there in just about an hour, go to room 216 and hear from legislative leaders up there. What makes Capitol Day so special, being able to do those types of things?
Well, I think it's a huge benefit having this group of people come to Jackson, be able to see one another for one thing, which is excellent, and then also make our way over to the Capitol meet with our legislators, talk about things that can make Mississippi, continue to make Mississippi great. And really discuss, have conversations with our elected officials about what matters most to each of you in your hometowns and organizations.
You know, in talking about what matters, in early last year, we released Securing Mississippi's Future Vision for Economic Growth. It was a report that was done by going out and listening to what people had to say and what was important to them. You know, it outlined 5 goals, and there were several recommendations under each of those. Why is it important that we continue to focus on this effort of moving our state forward?
Yeah, I see Securing Mississippi's Future report as our really strategic roadmap. Where are we going and what do we need to operate? What do we need to work on every day? And for those of you who don't know or haven't heard this from Scott himself say it many times, he literally keeps the report on the front of his desk so that he knows what he needs to be working on every day and what the organization, in what direction the organization needs to be pointed. It's going to and has already and will continue to guide our organization to help improve workforce, grow jobs, and lead to a strong economic environment in the state.
And this is something everyone can have a role in, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's got to be a public and private sector cooperation. That's really the most important thing for us to be able to reach our potential, our fullest potential.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Governor Tate Reeves. Governor, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. We just showed a video that we produced back in October. We debuted it at Hobnob. It really focuses on some of the great things about Mississippi, some things we have a lot to be proud of. When we debuted it at Hobnob, that was about 4 or 5 days before what become the biggest economic development announcement in the state of Mississippi. One more thing to be very proud of. Talk a little bit about, if you would, kind of why that's so important for our state and what it's going to do to help, you know, basically use that as a catalyst to move our state forward.
Well, thank you, Scott, and thanks to all of you for being here today. It's a really great opportunity to bring the business community together and meet with government leaders. Before I talk about that project that you asked about, I just want to reiterate to everyone in the room, I'm sure you've heard me say this because I've said it a lot over the last few months, but if you take that particular project out of the equation, over the last 8 years before I became governor, we averaged about $900 million a year in new capital expenditures in the state. If you take SDI out of the equations, we did $3.5 billion in 2022 alone without the largest economic development project. If you include SDI, we did $6 billion in new capital expenditures in Mississippi in 2022 alone. And as you all know, that's with an overall GDP of about $120 billion. And so the thing that I think made great sense about this project, and I will tell you, we've gone through an extensive effort over the last 3 years to ensure that we are doing ROIs on every state expenditure and new economic development project so that we ensure that we know not only what is our ROI at the state level, but we also know what the ROIs are at the local level, and we understand what the company is looking to do so as to try to minimize our risk. The special thing about this project, obviously, this is a company that currently exists in the state of Mississippi. They've been here for almost 15 years. They pay their employees at levels greater than what they have promised with this new 1,000 jobs, and they promised $93,000 a year for these additional 1,000 jobs. In addition to that, and I'm always the optimist, but we've spent a lot of time with the company leadership, and we've also seen what they're going to do with the 2,000 acres up in the Golden Triangle, and it's very similar to what the campus that they built down in South Texas over the last 3 years. And if you look at that particular campus, I think it's highly likely that not only will the company see and get to this 1,000 jobs over the next 2 to 4 years, you're going to see a lot more companies locate in that region. And you're going to see not only suppliers to SDI, but also end user customers locate in this industrial park, in this 2,000 acres. And because of that, I would not be surprised at all if, and they didn't guarantee this, and so we didn't headline it, but I think that the total number of jobs in this 2,000 acres could be twice what they have guaranteed and promised. And in a region of our state, like the Golden Triangle, what I would tell you is it's got a real opportunity to be a real game changer just for the entire region up in the Golden Triangle, and it's something that that I'm exceptionally proud of. I'm proud of our team. That they worked diligently. They traveled to other countries. They traveled to other continents working on this deal, and we really got it done in such a way where we did it very quickly. We were very private about it. No one knew about it, and there was a reason for that, because that's what the company wanted.
Well, and you mentioned the fact that in 2022 that $6 billion but with that comes a total of somewhat more than 5,000 jobs total in those projects. And while the big one is the one that gets all the headlines, sometimes those smaller ones are just as important, particularly small communities. Why is it important that you look at it from to use a baseball analogy? You like to hit the home run, but the singles and the doubles are important too, right?
Well, no question, and I will tell you, it's been intentional that we've gone after what I would call a single and double from the state's perspective, because we live in a very rural state. And look, it is natural for politicians who get elected every 4 years to focus on the big fish, the big project, the one that gets you above the fold on the front page of the newspaper. That's just a natural inkling to love that. But in reality, what I've told our team is, look, we're going to take the opportunity when it presents itself, but I'm much more interested in seeing 10 projects at $200 million a year in 10 different communities situated throughout our state. Because while it may be a single and a double to me, if we get $200 million CapEx with 150 jobs paying $70,000 a year, when I was up in Alcorn County just a couple weeks ago announcing the new forest products business, I can assure you that there were this many people in attendance, and every one of them didn't see that as a single or double. They thought it was a grand slam for their community. And when you look at the successes that we've had over the last 3 years, so many of these business locations that we have announced have been in that range: 150 million, 200 million, 130 jobs, 170 jobs. They're paying $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, and we've really worked very, very hard to focus our incentives, because we live in a state with scarce resources, to focus our incentives on those potential projects that lead to per capita incomes going up in every region of our state. And so we're not incentivizing very many businesses that are locating, that are hiring people, regardless of how many people they hire, that are paying below the county average wage. We're just not doing that anymore. And that's not always easy for everyone, and change is sometimes difficult, but I really do believe that that's what's in the best interest of the state long term.
Let me touch on just a few things that Scott says are important to MEC this year. There were 3 things that he mentioned: transportation funding, workforce development, and then one thing I want to touch on is the income tax. We have here y'all's report from last year, stronger than ever. This is what you produced at your 2022 annual meeting last June. And within that, you talk about legislative accomplishments. And one of those was the personal income tax reduction right there at the bottom of the page. I want to thank you for your help in what we did last year. Many of you have heard me speak about the advantages of eliminating the personal income tax, how that helps Mississippians, how that puts more money into their pockets. When you give them more disposable income, they're going to have a better ability to provide for themselves, improve their quality of life, provide for their children, spend those dollars in the community. How many of you sell a good or a service? Everybody in here sells a good or service. If you got a job, you're selling a good or you're selling a service. So if we put more money in their pockets, they're going to buy more stuff. They're going to buy more of the stuff that you're selling. They have more to give to their church. There's just no downside to letting people have more disposable income. You helped us last year get that message across, and we changed our tax structure last year to go to a flat 4% tax rate. What we did last year has been touted all across the country. I had no idea how many people were watching Mississippi and our efforts to eliminate the income tax. That's still a goal of mine, eliminate the income tax. And we may have to take steps along the way over the next few years to get there, but we're going to hopefully come to a day at some point where the citizens of our state get to keep all of their hard-earned money. So I wanted to, first of all, point that out. Thank you for your help and efforts in getting us there. And I'm proud to see that you listed 4 accomplishments last year. One of them was the elimination of the reduction of the income tax. 2 other things that Scott's mentioned when we met a couple of weeks ago was transportation. I want to brag on a couple of guys. Trey Lamar is over here. Raise your hand, Trey. And Jason White, standing over there. And then there was a guy named Mark Baker, who's no longer in the House. But in 2018, we passed a very transformative transportation bill. We took some of our use tax, dollars that we already have. This didn't raise a tax anywhere. We just took money that was already coming in and passed an Infrastructure and Modernization Act. And under this bill, we devote 1/3 of the use tax to transportation, to roads, bridges. At that time, it was about $120 million. I haven't checked to see what the number is lately, but at that time, it was $120 million. Every year, we took $20 million, we put it into the local bridge program, we took $50 million and gave it to the counties, and we took $50 million and gave it to the cities every year. And that has been happening every year since 2018. At that time, when we passed that bill, I think there were almost 700 bridges around this state that were closed or posted. It was in excess of 600, I know that. And I think it was approaching 700. Mike, do you remember how many? Is that about right? When I last checked, 4 years later, after the passage of the bill, we're down to 288. That's how many bridges have been repaired around this state. The plan is working. And these gentlemen that I just pointed to were the brains behind that. They were the ones who developed that plan, brought it up to the House of Representatives. We passed it, the Senate passed it, and that plan has begun to work over the last 4 years, and we're seeing improvements in our transportation and roads and bridges and infrastructure around the state. In addition to that, we've done a whole host of other things. We put a portion of the lottery money towards roads and bridges. Each year we designate and appropriate money towards roads and bridges, and all these things have worked together to make improvements. We're going to continue to do that this year. We're going to continue to push to make sure that our infrastructure is addressed. Second thing, or the last thing, is workforce development. And to make this point, let me tell you about a conversation I had last summer, well, 2 summers ago now. There was an individual here in Jackson from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. This guy was out of Washington, D.C., and his job was to go around the country and select sites for companies. And as a matter of conversation, just as curiosity, I said, tell me what the number one thing is you look for. When you're going to a state, going to a city, and you're looking to recommend a site to this company, what's the number one thing you look for? He said, workforce. You gotta have a good, educated, reliable workforce, or you don't even get on the list. Number 2 was infrastructure. Well, I think that highlights the importance of both of those things. So last year, we passed House Bill 1388, which was the Comprehensive Career and Technical Education Reform Act. That sounds impressive, doesn't it? It was a workforce development bill, and what we did under this bill was to create and put into all middle schools and high schools around the state career coaches. And their job is to sit there and guide students, tell students about career technical job opportunities, steer them towards those professions, make them aware of the jobs that exist, because many of our students, about 60% of our workforce, I think, is in those type of professions, those types of jobs, welders, mechanics, electricians, plumbers, good careers where they can make great money.
2 weekends ago, I had the privilege of meeting with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's the governor-elect of Arkansas. And in the course of that discussion, she said to me, "You really are putting a lot of pressure on me. You've raised your teachers too much." What a discussion to have. You're so far ahead of Arkansas, I'm probably going to have to move my teachers' pay raise up. What a place to be. And you're there now. You should be so very proud of what you have accomplished in Mississippi here. This year, we've got $350 million of appropriations. One of the best things that the legislature did last year was to tell the cities and the counties, if you'll put up your money on water and sewer, we'll take the money that was given to us by the federal, we'll match your money. That's going to end up being over $900 million in water and sewer in this state. Not the sexy kind of thing, but the thing that allows you to do business. The things that allow you to do your business. So you'll see more of that this year. You'll see our infrastructure, as Dean was talking about, we put $2.3 billion on it last year. You'll see that again this year, where we're looking, but more importantly, to people like Mike and others, we did almost $1 billion worth of actual contracts. Not that we appropriated the money, guess what? We're actually using it. We're putting it on the streets where it ought to be, and it should be every year. This next year, as you've probably heard, I have been from Gulfport to Corinth, and I have sat in these schools that have gone to a modified calendar. In that modified calendar, you go 9 weeks, you're off 2 or 3 weeks, you have intersessions in October, and you have intersessions at Christmas and spring, and about a 4-week break in the summer. They are producing records for us. And when I talk to the teachers in Corinth, I talk to them and I ask them, what's wrong with this? Then I ask the big question, what about football season? Oh, football was great, everybody came to the games. What about the band? The band played. What's wrong with this? Nothing. We love it. This gives us time off. By the way, I'm sick of those kids in March. They were real honest about it. And this gives me the break. So we have our kids, we are competitive with Alabama and China. We have our kids going to school in an organized fashion, in a learning fashion, so that they can come work for you, and one day they will have employees like you working for them. That is so important. We don't need to go like we always did. We need to start looking at our education system a little different. Now, Lamar County already started. Gulfport already started. Went down and sat in the intercession. During that intercession period, they still bring kids in. They feed them. They're in an educational learning environment. Whatever. It was magnificent. And so we can do that. We're going to end up being one of the leader states as our state proliferates all the way across. And I encourage each and every one of you to ask your parents, your school boards, whether that's a good idea for your school system. Because it is for everyone else that's trying it right now. So I encourage you to do that. I'd like to see us really address the modified school calendar, where we encourage schools around Mississippi to look at a modified calendar. I think that'll provide employees and employers and members of the Senate and governors and everything else out of our education system. So I'd like to see that go forward. You'll see, I think, a rural hospital assistance bill that'll come from us. I want to do a tax rebate. Our collections from individual taxpayers was $270 million more than we had budgeted, so I want to send their money back to them. So there are a lot. I think our infrastructure bill will be very significant again this year, over $2 billion for roads and bridges in our state. So I'd say a good bit of things, actually.
We've got Capitol Day today, and so this is our chance to come during the first week of the legislative session, meet with our elected officials, have conversations with them, and talk about what is important to us in setting the direction for the rest of the year.
It's always important to come to Capitol Day and be a part. So this is the kickoff of the legislative session. So you get an opportunity to see what the issues are going to be in the legislature this year, and then you have an opportunity to somewhat affect those by having conversations with the members of the legislature who are from your district.
Capitol Day is a great kickoff. It starts, of course, when session starts for the new year, and so it's sort of MEC's way of stepping in and being a presence and letting our legislators know we're here as an industry, having needs and wanting to express our agenda to them, to keep that in the forefront of their minds as they interject bills and start doing the business of the state. So Capitol Day is a real important part of what MEC does in terms of its presence to our state legislators.
The Mississippi Economic Council is the state chamber of commerce. So all of the businesses across the state who are members benefit because we have one voice with the major issues that are going on in our state. So being a member gives you the advantage of being at the table for major decisions that are made in our state.
We've been a member for a long, long time. Actually, my father was chair of the MEC about 30 years ago, and so we've been quite a long time as a part of the organization. And it's very beneficial to the state and to us as an individual business. It just the rising tide lifts all boats, and it helps to establish a great business community and business climate in Mississippi.
My company is the Taylor Group, Inc. We're in Louisville, Mississippi. We've been a long-standing member of MEC for years now. I'm trying to go back in history about the time, but it's been 30 years or so, I'm sure. But anyway, long-standing member and enjoy the relationship with MEC, all the members of MEC, the networking we get out of it, and the effectiveness that one voice can have with many in the Capitol because of the MEC influence.
It's given us a voice. And that's what you need as business leaders across the state, because then you can have the opportunity to go and talk to our elected officials about the things that you see that perhaps they might not have a finger on the pulse of.
Getting involved with MEC, again, it's the rising tide lifts all boats. To have a good, strong work environment and work employment environment in Mississippi as a whole helps all the businesses in Mississippi benefit. And being here with the legislature in this first week of the legislation, it really helps us figure out where we need to go and what we need to do this year in order to make Mississippi a great place to own a business and operate.
Oh, this is just great. And what's even best is we finally are able to be back in person on the first Thursday of the session and really get back to the way things have been in the past and focus on let's have a great legislative session together.
How can people get more information about membership?
MEC.ms. Real simple. Go to our website, MEC.ms.